All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tippie Alumni Panel Series, The Business of Sports, Insights into the World of Sports from Tippie Alumni Working in the Industry. My name is Ashley Durham, and I am the Director of Alumni Relations at the Tippie College of Business. As the coordinator of this program, I am grateful to our alumni panelists and our moderator, Dan Matheson, for sharing their time and their expertise with us today. The Alumni Panel Series will focus on different industries, all under the title of The Business of, coordinated by Tippie's Alumni Relations Office. This series will highlight the knowledge, expertise, and careers of Tippie alumni. We plan to host these panels regularly and plan to highlight a variety of industries and initiatives our alumni are influencing every day. I'd now like to introduce our new dean, Amy Christoph Brown. Amy is a highly respected faculty member and researcher, and she served as the college's senior associate dean before stepping into the interim role in March and recently became the dean of the college. Thank you for being here, Amy.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here, and I see a number of my former students on the calls, so they will confirm or deny whether I am a highly respected faculty member. Hopefully the answer is yes. Spencer's nodding his head, so that's good news. Good news for me. Thank you all for joining us today. This is a terrific opportunity for us to get together. You know, we've got 184 people on the call at the moment, so there's a lot of people interested in this topic. I appreciate all of the work that Ashley and Barb have done putting together this webinar series. As I was speaking with some folks this week, you know, they asked, what are some of the things that you've learned from COVID? And one of the things we've definitely learned is that when we reach out virtually and offer opportunities for you to reconnect with each other, people are very interested in it. And it's been a terrific opportunity for us to do it. I appreciate their team being very creative during this time of high stress and increased workloads for people. To introduce new initiatives like this webinar series has just been terrific. So thank you for doing it. We're going to continue doing these in the spring, no matter what's going on with the vaccine. I'll just give you a couple of heads up. We have in January our faculty member, Nick Westergaard, who specializes in communications and presentation. He's going to be speaking to us in his area of expertise. Then in February, we're doing the business of inclusiveness with a panel of alums that are working in a variety of companies, really promoting inclusive workspaces and workplaces. So we hope that you'll join us for those. We also have a really exciting seminar that's coming up later this week, the COVID-19 vaccine distribution panel. And this is something I think Barb's going to put it in our chat session. But if you have questions or are just intrigued by what is the distribution process that's going to happen with how this vaccine gets disseminated, we've got faculty members, we've got members from the military who are helping out with this task force. We've got corporate folks. We've got a broad panel that I think will be really fascinating. So if you're interested in all things distribution and supply chain with regard to the vaccine, please join us for that as well. I'm going to stop talking and let our panelists get started. I'm just going to sit and listen. I love to hear from you all and what you're doing. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Amy. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. You can submit questions to us through the Q&A panel. Just click the Q&A button on your meeting controls to open it. Type in your question and click send. Ask questions at any time. We'll collect these and do our best to answer them in real time if appropriate, and then at the Q&A during the end. We did receive several questions in advance, so thank you to those of you who submitted them, and we'll do our very best to cover as many topics and questions as we can in an hour. I'd now like to introduce Dan Matheson. Dan is the director of the University of Iowa Sport and Recreation Management Program in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences and an associate professor of instruction. He also holds a complementary appointment in the Iowa College of Law, where he teaches courses in sports law and baseball salary arbitration. When I was thinking about our sports panel series and who might be a good moderator, Dan immediately came to my mind. I had the pleasure to hear Dan speak at an Iowa City West football event, and I knew he'd be a great fit for this program, given his own personal experiences and his love for the industry. Thank you so much for being here, Dan, and thank you for your time and effort in making this event a success. And I will let you take it from here.
Thank you so much for that generous introduction, Ashley. And thank goodness West High football didn't ask me to come speak on anything related to football itself, because that would have gone the wrong direction. It's a great pleasure to be here today. Thank you for inviting me. And part of the pleasure is because some of my former students and friends and colleagues in the industry are make up this all-star panel. And I've been looking forward to the chance to ask some of the burning questions that I have of all of these industry experts. Hopefully everybody signed in will enjoy where we plan to take things. Lots of great questions came in pre-panel, as Ashley said, and hopefully many of the topics we're going to cover will hit on a lot of those, but we will have time for your questions that come in along the way, as well as many as we can fit in through the Q&A button. So to get started and introduce these all-stars to you, I want to go through, I'll call you out based on where you line up on my screen, and just ask you to briefly introduce yourself to our attendees by name, what your current position is in the industry, what degree you hold from Iowa, or degrees in some cases, and if you could briefly tell us about what was a big break that launched your career in sports, or some other pivotal moment or experience on your journey to where you are today that helped you get there. So I'm going to start with you, Spencer.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan. Pleasure to be here. I'm Spencer Anderson. I graduated from Iowa in 2009 in finance and economics, and decided I couldn't get enough of Iowa City, and hung on for 4 more years and got my law degree as well as my MBA. And I'm currently a part of the Pacers. This is my 8th year with the Indiana Pacers, and I'm the director of basketball analytics. And we can talk more about kind of what that is later on. But, you know, my big break really came as I was transitioning from undergrad to grad school. And I was lucky enough to, you know, get introduced to 2 people that are on this panel right now, Dan Matheson and Steve Lacroix, 2 of my mentors in the industry who, you know, really helped me to figure out, you know, what the next steps were, and that it was even possible to go from Iowa to an NBA franchise. And, you know, with their help and some opportunities with internships, I was lucky enough to kind of get my break and get an opportunity to be a part of a team in the NBA, which is really what I was wanting to do as I went back to grad school. So I feel very thankful to both you and Dan and Steve, who are on this panel. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Spencer. That the pleasure has been all mine since meeting you and starting our relationship. And as I've told you before, all I had to do was point you in the right direction. You had all the ingredients to get to where you are today. Katie.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Lacroix. I currently work for a sports marketing agency called Forefront as an account executive on our innovation team, which is essentially the consulting arm of our organization. I graduated from Iowa in 2018 with a double major in marketing and business analytics. And really, you know, my big break that quite literally launched my career was actually an informational interview that I did with one of the co-founders of Forefront, Dan Magala. I basically took a trip my senior year to visit Chicago, do some networking, and try to line up a few meetings with people in the industry to get a better understanding of what the opportunities were within Chicago. And Dan was kind enough to set aside some time to meet with me, share a little bit of his career advice and more about Forefront. It ended up being just a really great fit. I got an internship after I graduated with Forefront and then got brought on full time. So I feel like I really owe the beginning of my career to that conversation with Dan and just the opportunity to work for Forefront.
Excellent. Thanks, Katie. Jasmine.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jasmine Constantino. I am the Business Operations Manager for the Windy City Bulls, which is the NBA G League affiliate of the Chicago Bulls. And I graduated in 2013. I was a management and organizations major with the entrepreneur track. And then I did a minor in Spanish and a certificate in leadership studies. And I took as many electives as I could with Dan in the sport recommended classes. So that was always fun. My big break, I would say, was based on me I feel like I just kind of put myself out there after I had some internship experience. It definitely helped me doing 3 internships to figure out what I liked and what I didn't like. I did radio, baseball, and then basketball. And then going into that third one, I reached out to them and kind of asking about like what type of internships they had, because they only had account executive roles. And I was asking if they had something with game days and office hours. They're like, no, we don't have that, but we'll make it for you. So I always tell people, you never know what could happen. If you reach out and you have some skills to give, they'll give you an opportunity. And then that gave me the chance to follow the director of ticket sales and learn about sales. And I was actually pretty good at groups and was there 5 seasons. And I was there as our group sales manager and game day manager when I had left. And that was part of my next big break. Was once again, I just reached out to someone. Really, it was more of a networking thing where I wanted to move to Chicagoland and just a bigger area than Des Moines, and asked someone that worked at the Windy City personally just what she liked about the area. I thought maybe I'd crazy enough go back to baseball. But really, she was like, send your resume. And I tell people that could be a huge moment, is just that networking. And she happened to show the team president and he talked to mine. And 2 weeks later, I moved and I was in Illinois working for the Windy City Bulls. And I didn't apply, it wasn't a job posted. It was just I happened to have skills that could help. And it's pretty cool to see that I've been here. This is my 3rd season with Windy City, but my 8th season in the G League. Yeah.
Love that story, Jasmine. Thanks. Steve.
The old guy on the panel. 1990 Iowa Graduate Business Administration and a marketing major. Wrapping up my 20th season with the Minnesota Vikings as Executive Vice President, Chief Marketing Officer. This will actually be my last season, so I'll be transitioning to a new adventure in 2021 and super excited about it. I think my pivotal moment was between, really went to Western Illinois University right after Iowa, immediately after that summer. And I worked for the Peoria Rivermen minor league hockey team that summer and really learned that, hey, I could sell, I could create revenue, close deals. And then when we visited the Indiana Pacers that following year, it was a group of students. We went kind of a barnstorming tour to meet with the teams in Indy and in Chicago as well. When we met with the Pacers, I was like, man, I have to work here. And so I figured out a way to network my way in and get hired on an intern basis. And then that led to 10 great years there before coming to Minnesota. So Spencer, it's good to see that Pacers jersey in your background, and a lot of fond and fun memories from 9 out of 10 years in the playoffs there when I was there for my tenure. It's great.
Outstanding. Thanks, Steve. Nellie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nellie Navarez. I graduated from Iowa in '97 with my BBA in accounting. I stuck around Iowa City. I knew then that maybe accounting wasn't for me, maybe not sure what I wanted to do. I'd kind of settled on event management, sounded like a good path, and maybe I'd move to New York. So no job, no place to live, kind of living by my suitcase. About 2 weeks before I went to New York, I was at a facilitator's workshop learning about facilitation skills, the like, and somebody in my small group was looking for some temp help for events based out of New York. Worked out well. She happened to work for the U.S. Tennis Association, and it happened to be a month before the U.S. Open. So talk about timing. She brought me on, and that temp job 3 months later turned into a permanent position, and I've been with the organization for 21 years now.
All great stories that should be very inspiring to everybody in attendance here. You just never know where that break is going to come from, especially in a business like this, where it's not like there are a lot of campus career fairs in the sports industry, which is why a lot of questions always come in about how do you get to where you're at. So I want to start with a question that I'm going to direct to, this is a father-daughter question. Start with Steve and then work my way down to Katie. Recently, there was an article in the Washington Post titled "Sports Has a Gen Z Problem. The Pandemic May Accelerate It." And in that article, league marketing executives from the major 4 North American sports leagues talked about the challenges that they experience attracting new fans from the population born roughly 1996 or later, and getting them to consume sports content, and the threat to the sports industry if the industry is not ultimately successful at converting Gen Z into sports fans at the same rate that sports has historically captured new fans. So I want to start with Steve and ask you to talk about, from the front lines, what you see related to this issue as you are working every day to oversee the marketing of the NFL product to the next generation of Minnesota Vikings fans.
Yeah, it's an issue. I mean, we certainly try as hard as we can to engage them through unique content. Fantasy football, obviously sports betting is becoming a really big thing as states approve sports betting. There's significant partnerships being developed with these sports betting companies, and a lot of that's geared towards Gen Z. I think the bigger challenge is game day. How do you get that generation to commit 5 to 6 hours to come to the stadium, buy tickets? Eventually that's going to be who we need as our season ticket base. And so the pressure is going to be on, first off, you need to have connectivity at your venue. Otherwise they won't show up. That fan experience, what's unique and something that you can only experience in stadium on game day. So there's a lot of pressure on teams to get creative, and we work really hard across all of our social platforms to be creative and come up with content that other news outlets cannot get access to, whether that's on the team plane for road trips and showing off guys' shoe game to their wardrobes, to just different ways to create unique content. But it's going to be interesting as that generation is older and becomes what needs to be your wheelhouse for season ticket base.
As a follow-up to that, Steve, do you see the traditional concept of what a season ticket is going away, transforming into something else in the future?
Well, in the NFL, we're fortunate where there's only 8 regular season games, 2 preseason games in a normal season. That formula may change over time as far as home games go. But baseball with 81 home games, that's a lot of commitment for a season ticket member to come to. So you see a lot of mini packages, kind of things. I think from a broadcast perspective, you're going to see networks have different types of broadcasts, maybe something that's sports betting related versus the more traditional broadcast. So those camera angles are different. Maybe they show certain stats from a betting perspective. So I think you're going to see, technology from that standpoint. But as far as getting people in stadium and arenas on game day, that's again is going to be the biggest challenge.
So now, Katie, to follow up with somebody who is squarely in Gen Z and can speak from that perspective, can you talk about, as somebody who also consults with sports brands, about overcoming, I'm guessing that you're talking about this very challenge with a lot of the brands that you consult with. What are they looking to accomplish, and how are you helping them achieve their goals when it comes to converting Gen Z into consumers of their brands?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's definitely a problem that we're helping a lot of our teams and leagues that we work with strategize around and think creatively about how to engage that age bucket. I feel like I'm kind of in the middle. I'm not sure if I'm quite on the tail end of being a millennial or quite on the beginning end of being a Gen Z, but it's definitely a perspective that I try to lean into and kind of bring to the teams and projects that I work on. I think from my perspective, from the consulting side, working with a variety of different organizations, it seems like there's really a spectrum ranging from teams and organizations that are more traditional, kind of not as willing to take some bold risks. And then there's others on the far end of the spectrum, the opposite side, that are willing to innovate, kind of adapt, do things differently. And from my point of view, I really feel like kind of where organizations lie on that spectrum is really, translates a little bit to how they're able to adapt and reach the Gen Z age bucket, since that is definitely a growing group. So some of the organizations that are really, taking those bold risks, jumping on new trends and new platforms. Some of the teams that we've seen be really successful on TikTok, for example, I think those are all great examples of organizations that are willing to kind of adapt, change things up, and reach that age group in a new way. Kind of three key themes that we always consult on as it relates to the Gen Z age bucket really revolves around social media, the platforms and different content that's being produced. Digital and streaming is definitely huge. Thinking about the fact that the Gen Z age group is really a group of consumers that are likely going to be cord nevers. They're, past the cord cutters phase, and they're likely not even going to ever really have a cable subscription. So how do we reach them through streaming platforms, and how are they engaging with the content? And then lastly, really thinking about esports as well. In addition to sports betting that my dad mentioned, I think esports is a huge growing opportunity to reach that age group that will just continue to see grow and grow. So those are some of the primary trends and big overarching aspects that we see as great engagement opportunities for the Gen Z.
Do you have one or a couple examples of those teams or leagues that you would say are the blue ribbon standard for aggressiveness and creativity and willingness to take risks?
There's definitely a few that come to mind, but I feel like it changes quite frequently. Sometimes it's, just hopping on a fun social media trend, but then there's also the flip side of that too, where the organizations that take a stand when they're, being passionate and really raising the voices of their fans about social causes. That's another great way I think that they can resonate with the Gen Z group. So, it varies, I feel like, but overall, the ones that stand out the most are really organizations that are taking risks, whether that be for a moment or for an extended campaign. Those are the ones that kind of rise to the top.
Thanks. Any other thoughts on this issue, Jasmine, Nellie, Spencer? Things that your leagues, organizations, teams are doing to tackle this problem? I know, Nellie, when it comes to tennis, can you describe any strategies that tennis is using to capture an audience that may not be prepared to sit and watch a full tennis match?
And talk about this year, I think we were sort of forced to deal with that issue with the whole no fan model that we had for the US Open, but we really kind of brought that whole digital fan experience in, at least tried to make that a focus at the forefront for us. And I'd say we were pretty successful, and I think you're seeing some of the other sports out there doing the same thing with the on-screen cheering and the cheering from home and that kind of portion of it. I'd say maybe tennis is a little bit on the slower side to adapt to change and bring those things in. So hopefully what we were able to do for the US Open this year will continue to grow and bring us those new fans as well.
Thank you. Gonna go to Spencer next with this question related to analytics. And I wanted to ask you this question because as a baseball fan, as I am, watching the World Series, and most sports fans know probably where I'm heading with this. In Game 6 of the World Series, the Tampa Bay Rays manager made a controversial pitching change that many people blamed the analytics reliant Rays organization on basing the pitching change around the data and what the data tells them about going through the lineup a third time for a starting pitcher. And the pitching change did not work out the Dodgers made a quick comeback and knocked the Rays out. I know it's not your sport, Spencer, but I use that as a setup to ask you about how the analytics process is being utilized in the NBA to make on-court and personnel decisions. And can you talk from your experiences about how analytics has been used historically in your 8 years when making decisions in the draft and when making a game plan and then in-game decisions?
Sure. Yeah. Definitely interesting path of occurrences there with the World Series. I think that the thing about analytics is that it's a buzzword and it's something that people think is kind of new, but it's been around for centuries. You know, all analytics is using data and information to try and make better decisions. So, you know, I'm not really sure how Tampa Bay handles their decision making, but I know for most sports teams, it's part of the puzzle, right? So, you know, the exciting thing about analytics right now within teams is that our data is getting so much more granular and better, that we have a better canvas essentially to help explain what's happening on the field or on the court. And so, you know, while our models still won't encompass everything, they are getting better. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's one piece of the puzzle. There's so many things that you can't quantify. And, you know, the good and bad thing about working in sports is that at the end of the day, someone wins and someone loses. And the one thing that we try and focus on is the process and making sure that we've got a process that we're working towards with our group as to how we do things, and we're not outcome driven. You know, you could have it 99% of the time, you know, that it's going to go your way, but that 1 out of 100 is going to get you every once in a while, and you have to, you know, move forward and you know, be focused on the process and not necessarily all the time on the outcomes. So when it comes to the draft, you know, we're a piece of the puzzle. We've got draft models that are helping to inform our head decision makers on a number of different spectrums, you know, from specific skills that are important to basketball to, you know, whether we think that the guy has the requisite athleticism or size to be successful in the league. So those are a couple ways that we assist our decision makers with using numbers and information and data.
Have you, I'm sure there's wide variation from organization to organization and coaching staff, one coaching staff to another. What's the most progressive example that you can think of in the league of a coaching staff that's receiving data in game that is making a decision about who comes off the bench, how many minutes are played by individual players, or in-game type minute-to-minute decisions like that?
Yeah, it's really hard to know exactly how all the other teams are operating, given the level of competition that we're at, and no one's really sharing any secrets as to how the secret sauce gets made. But, you know, information, I feel very lucky that the NBA has really embraced this data movement and has invested heavily in player tracking data. The NFL has that, and a number of leagues do, as well as other data sources to assist our decision makers, whether it be a coach or a front office member, to have the best information in order to make that decision. In terms of specific examples, you know, I'm not 100% sure, but, you know, the league does allow for folks to be behind the bench with an iPad, I believe, to kind of go through whatever they want to use it for. I believe it's hooked into some of the video sources that the league has. And so if you want to show a player, coach him up on a certain play or, what have you. So the NBA has been terrific in making analytics and arming the teams with the resources in order to, kind of give decision makers the best information and the most data that they can so that they can make the best decisions for their respective organizations, which has been awesome.
Following up on that, Spencer, what would be your advice? We have a lot of interested participants today in analytics careers in sports and careers in sports in general. What would be your advice for somebody that wants to find their way into a sports analytics career?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. The good news is that my thinking is that analytics within sports is going to continue to grow as we get better technology that provides more granular information and better information. But that also means that in order to set yourself apart, you're really going to have to be technical. You're going to need to know how to program and manipulate data at a really high level. And what I would advise is to start today. There's plenty of sites out there that have a vast array of different sports data sets, and be creative. Think of different things that you're kind of wondering about. Ask some different questions, or try and talk to people who might be in the industry that would have some questions or advice, and then go and try and research it. Try and do the analytics. Try and create some deliverables, and then try and get experience through internships. I know it's very hard at this time with COVID-19. Normally we have interns every spring, summer, and fall, but unfortunately with COVID-19, we've had to shut our program down. We're hoping that it gets reopened in the summer, but I think that we're not alone in that. And so, be on the lookout for whatever opportunities that you can partake in. And if you're in college, look to the collegiate teams and sports. I know that they can always use a hand, and if there's some technical skills that can help them save 5 minutes a day for their whole season, it's going to be well worth it for them, and it's going to be well worth it for you because you're going to be able to show them what you can do. So those are a few pieces of advice, at least. Do
you recommend for those interested in analytics careers potentially attending the Sloan conference in the spring?
Yeah, it is a beneficial conference. I've attended every year. The one drawback is that it's very costly. They are doing it virtually this year, so I don't know how much of a benefit it will be. I think I echo a number of folks on this panel that networking has really been important to my career, as well as I think a few others here. And so if there's a way that you can get your name out there and talk to some of the people that are doing some jobs that are interesting to you, then it'll be beneficial. So whether it's the Sloan conference or there's a number of other conferences that have popped up within sports analytics that might be a better value. I can't say that one of them is better than another, but I know as a college student, it was always tough to fork over the money to attend. It was well worth it in the end, but I know that times are tough right now. So be creative and look at a number of different conferences, and maybe some that are more close to the University of Iowa that might be in the Midwest.
Good advice. Thank you. Jasmine, Nellie, and Katie, I want to go to you next with this question. I recently witnessed one of my friends and former colleagues at the Yankees, Kim Ng, break through a barrier by becoming the first woman GM of a Major League Baseball team. And I'd like to hear from you on what Kim's hiring means from your perspective for all women in sports. And do you have any personal advice you can provide to young women looking to break into the sports industry as we enter 2021? I'll go to you first, Jasmine, if you want to start it off.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, for me, I've actually been fortunate that like the different places, even back to my internships, there have been females there in different roles, whether it's managers or directors. So that's been great to see, especially with my time in Des Moines for the 5 seasons. The VP there, Randy Burrell, has taught me a lot. And even now I go back to her and ask her for things because she's been part of the league since the start of the development league. And so she knows everything from like front office operations and game day. So it's great to have those resources and someone to, relate to a little bit better. I was actually able to meet the first G League team president, Shelly Wilkes. So that was a really cool experience to hear. And I think when she was announced years ago that she was pregnant when she was announced as president. So those unique things that you like hear and like the stories that they have, it's really cool. Especially with Kim, like you said, that was a monumental thing. But for me, the thing that stood out was that she was the first Asian American in MLB history as a GM. Like I haven't seen that, like diversity and female leadership. So that was like, wow, for me. And then like, I see that, yes, there's females in the industry and it's happening, but it's just really exciting for me to see that, wow, we have different people from different culture backgrounds. Our next vice president elect is a biracial female like me. So those are just really exciting things to see. Like we're here, we're out there, and we're starting to take on some of these roles. There needs to be more, yes, but we're working on it. And I think that the advice is that there are females in sports that you can reach out to. So if you are a female, we're here to help, reach out to us, ask. And then one thing for sports, I would say you don't have to be like a sports expert. I didn't go into analytics, so I don't know everything about every player, but that was one thing I worried about was like, I have to know everything. And I'm like, no, I learn a lot, especially with the G League and learning about the players and stuff every season. And then from there, probably not just for females, but for everybody, like always keep learning and building your skills. That's what I learned during COVID was, people got cut in certain things, but I've learned a lot over the years and I would say kind of made myself somewhat valuable right now. But from that point though, is like, once you learn skills and you have these different ideas, don't be afraid to speak up. If you are the only female in the room or only minority, like share those ideas. And I think that's a really big part of, seeing that the industry is changing. We have all these new ideas coming in from different perspectives. But yeah, that'd be my advice.
Excellent advice. Katie, Nellie, who wants to jump in next? Any additional thoughts that you want to add or echo?
Yeah, I can definitely jump in next. I think just echoing Jasmine's excitement, the news was incredibly just awesome to hear and about time. I think, it's so important to have female representation at all levels of an organization. It's just really exciting to see Kim, taking that step, and she's truly a trailblazer, which is really amazing. She actually really reminds me of a sports business executive that was way ahead of her time. Her name was Midge Donahue, and she actually was the first female sports executive, and she started working for the Cubs in 1919, so a long time ago, over 100 years ago. And she's actually responsible for the creation of a season ticket. She was the first person to suggest that families and children's tickets be discounted, and she even came up with the idea of a game day promotion. So there's so many women that have had a lasting impact on the way we do sports business today. I would definitely, think through that as an inspiration for everyone trying to break into sports in 2021. I think not settling for the way things have always been done, continuing to challenge and bring up different ideas, I think is so important. And overall, my advice to women looking to break into the industry would be to use Kim and Midge as your inspirations to really leave a lasting legacy and bring new ideas to the table, because our business should evolve and change with the times.
Yeah, I would echo all of those. It's great to hear Kim's news, and the feeling was it's about time, probably long overdue. We also we promoted our first female to be the US Open Tournament Director this year as well. So those stories are out there. It is kind of sad that we are still using the word first in front of these achievements for women. But another bit of advice I would give to women out there, there are organizations in sports specific to women and supporting them moving up in the industry. So if you take the time to look those up, the Women's Sports Foundation, the WISE networks that are out there, you can learn a lot about opportunities, and you can learn a lot about other women who maybe took the baby steps before those who made these big, colossal moves, and their stories are just as important as everyone else's as well.
Thank you, Jasmine, Katie, Nellie. Time evaporates quickly on Zoom, and so I want to go rapid fire for this next question. I'll run through the lineup, and if you could identify between 1 to 3 characteristics that you look for when hiring new team members in your organizations. We've got a lot of interested job seekers and prospective job seekers in this panel. So 1 to 3 characteristics when you're looking to hire. Spencer, let me start with you.
Sure. I look for someone who has humility, someone who's also wants to continue to learn. And those are the main 2 things that I look for.
Good. Katie.
Yeah, I'll take Spencer's with the learning. Willingness to learn, I think, is huge. And then someone that has drive and passion for what they want to do.
Good. Jasmine.
Yeah, I would say the driven part, but I would say community driven, especially in sales. I think it matters that you want to build relationships and give back. Ambitious, like I said, if you're going to want to learn to do things, you're going to want to grow if you're ambitious, and competitive. I think it's always a nice driver to how you get your staff motivated, is having competitive people.
Excellent. Steve.
I would say competitive and a team first mentality. How will they come in and compete to be a better person, a better employee, make our company better, but always in a team environment.
And Nellie, it's tough when so many great ones have been mentioned.
Exactly. I would agree with all of those. And the important thing to be honest about, I think, in the world of sports is that it is a very stressful job. And so being able to demonstrate that you can handle stress, that you are flexible and you can pivot on a moment's notice is a great skill to show to a potential employer.
Great. All great characteristics that our attendees can take to heart as they think about progressing. And so with that in mind, sticking with this job search theme that many of our attendees have questions about, who has advice in this very unusual time that we're dealing with students that are graduating? What do you recommend as they try to pursue their first job or internship opportunity after graduation at a time when there are so few opportunities out there in the industry? Any thoughts about how job searching may need to adapt, at least in the short term, for our December and May graduates?
I'll jump in there. I use the term professionally persistent. And so you need to be persistent to follow up with people, not to the point where it's over the top, but also it's not maybe just one check-in and done. And so as you build your network, it's not about the size of your network, it's those that you really engage with. And obviously with LinkedIn and various tools that are out there, it's easier than what it was years ago, but take advantage of that. And many executives will engage and at least try to help you along the way. And not all will, but there'll be more than you think if you're professionally persistent.
Just reaching out for even if there's no job at the organization, just to connect and let them know that you're out there and interested if the right opportunity comes up.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. And obviously everything's virtual now, so maybe it's easier to get that meeting because video is more accepted versus having to take an in-person meeting. And so hopefully that can work to your advantage. And you have to be patient. The industry is at a crossroads, and coming out of COVID, I think it's going to be different than what it was going into. And so that'll be interesting to see what opportunities come up. And might have to take that second internship after your first internship just to stay in the business and continue to evolve your skill set in the industry.
Does anyone on the panel believe that if the sports opportunity that you ultimately want isn't there at the moment, look for something in a different industry that's going to help grow your skill set so that when hiring does pick up in the sports industry, you've continued to develop professionally in a way that's marketable to a sports employer?
Yeah, I agree with what he was saying about the skills stuff, but even today I talked to a student that he wasn't sure about his resume and how to get that sports stuff on there. But then after talking to him, how he's done sales in other areas, I'm like, that's huge for like sports, like everything that we're doing in Tippie, like this is business. I did business and I'm working in sports. So it's one of those things that you can learn those skills later about working game days, but a lot of the stuff that we do is business things that you can learn working an internship at a corporation or volunteering. I always say, like he said, now's the time to do informational interviews. You can learn a lot of things. And I have taught myself Photoshop last year. Wish I would have took graphic design in school. So there's a lot of other areas that you wouldn't think is that much of a sports industry type skill, but it helps a lot to know some of those other things that you learn with businesses or courses you can be taking on the side at school, you know, for extra credits and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would echo that, what Jasmine said, and think creatively. So, you know, you might not be able to get on with a team right now if that is your desire, but, you know, we have a ton of different partners that help us, you know, different vendors and different companies that assist, you know, whether it be from game day to data vendors. And so if you want to be involved in sports in any capacity, you know, try and think beyond just a team, because there's plenty of very fulfilling roles outside of the team life.
I'd also maybe just add away from the pro side, look into your national governing bodies for all the sports across the country. That's a great way to get a sports job. Your local parks and rec, every city, state, town has somewhere where you can get operational experience and get that resume builder on there as well, either in a volunteer capacity, part-time, or just any kind of skill set there.
A lot of good advice here for our attendees to take away and apply to their personal searches. I want to ask the panel a question that came in pre-panel from an attendee. What new revenue possibilities that were found this year during COVID do you believe will stick around long term? Possibly as it relates to marketing, sponsorships, sales, anything that might have developed in response to COVID, but might have proven itself as a new tactic.
I'll jump in. I think doing things virtually and then monetizing those will be a lot smarter moving forward. It was all kind of thrown into the fire when everything shut down in March, and good example is the NFL draft, and that was all virtual, both from the football operations as well as the business side of the operation, and we pulled it off. And I think there's ways that you can monetize that with more planning, and certainly there's cost savings with that as well when things aren't done in person. So I think there'll be a blend moving forward.
Yeah, I would say just going off that, the virtual idea planning was big for us, and how we can do our virtual 5K with a sponsor on it next year. We branded our virtual education programs with a sponsor on it. So there's been some other unique things that we hadn't done, but we kind of forced ourselves into, but we know that those are things that we will continue to do.
And I think things were trending this way prior to COVID-19, and now this has only accelerated it, but just the emphasis on the ability to create social and digital content. I think organizations are really realizing that that's a big area and opportunity to have a really strong connection point with fans through those platforms. And I think that's just only been accelerated through recent events.
Nellie, since there were so many questions from attendees related to COVID before we started. Your organization was able to pull off the U.S. Open this past year in under extraordinarily challenging circumstances. Can you talk about that process of adapting that event to fit the restrictions? And something you alluded to before, how did you maximize the impact of it through some of these strategies that have been coming up, digital, social, and otherwise?
Yeah, I would say it was kind of surreal seeing as how we started off the year thinking that the Australian wildfires were going to be the worst thing that we had to deal with in tennis, and look where we are now. It really kind of hit us when Indian Wells completely out-canceled their whole events. We were returning from an international event in Hawaii, and I think at that time we began to realize that we're going to have to come up with some different plans to see what we can actually do. We started with the medical advisory team that we put together, and we still have that medical advisory team going. They have led both everything that we've done, US Open related and local tournament wise and local event wise. They are still guiding us on a daily basis as to what we can and cannot do. And then we got into scenario planning. What does it look like with 75% fans? What does it look like with no fans? What does it look like with 25% fans? What if we can't have international players come, into the country? What if they don't want to come? What if the government won't let us do this? We started that pretty early, and I would say those scenarios probably changed weekly as we were going along. They probably changed daily the closer we got. We were lucky that to be in New York, and New York was doing a really great job of managing the pandemic. That helped us out a lot. We probably called in favors from everybody we knew on a national and international level that we could to make sure that the players could cross those borders as they needed to. Not only to come to the US and play the US Open, but to possibly go back to Europe and play the French Open as well. There was that whole issue there. We finally went public with our plans in mid-June, and that was a very exciting moment for us. And we'd committed to we were going to pull this event off in whatever shape we can. I would say that whatever we had discussed in June, probably maybe about a third to half of that actually transpired. The plan was still in place as we went along to the actual day of the event. And those really close will tell you that they didn't think it was going to happen. They still had that anxiety until that first ball went up that Monday of the US Open. So it was exciting to watch. I know it was a point of pride for a lot of staff members and probably for the players as well. There was a lot of time spent communicating with the players, making sure they felt safe, making sure they felt that this is where they wanted to be and what they wanted to do, and to get them excited about being able to play tennis on a Grand Slam level again. It was a great success, but here we are, already scenario planning for 2021. So as much as we were able to enjoy what was able to happen, the reality is that we're not out of this quite yet. So we're back to where we were, in March with a lot of learnings and a lot of successes. And I think I can speak for a lot of people in sports. We just want to get the fans back as soon as we can. I think we miss them, they miss us, and we're all looking forward to that day.
Congratulations. That's a great achievement. Question came into the Q&A, and I might ask it, but also adapt it slightly. Question came in from someone who interned for an NFL team last season, but says they're open to working in other sports as well, and wanted to ask kind of generally, what are some of the major differences between working in different sports, such as, how does the number of games in some sports affect work and lifestyle, the different demographics of fans. But I think it would be interesting to hear from our panelists. Jasmine, what do you enjoy about working in the minor league sports level? Nellie, what do you enjoy about working at the league level? And then on the team level, Spencer, Steve, if you can talk about that versus then the agency side. We've got all aspects represented here. Maybe Jasmine, can you start that off?
Yeah, working in minor league is busy work, labor work sometimes. So you get to wear many hats. And I think that's what I enjoy the most about it. I used to think like, okay, I want to do like ticket sales for a certain team. And then I realized I would have not have liked sitting there making phone calls all day. I just have that personality where I just got to keep moving, get out and do things, do a community event. So that was a really good thing that I learned, that, with minor league teams in Des Moines, I was taking players to like community visits. I was working game day, setting up stuff, throwing the Chick-fil-A parachutes from the top of the stand. So I enjoyed doing so much, and I learned a lot that way too. That's why I always tell people, if you can do an internship in a minor league team, you're going to learn a lot of different skills, especially if you do baseball. Props to anybody that does baseball. That's why I didn't do it. It was too hot, too much. Like pulling tarp, not fun. But for me now, like my business operations manager role is very different than another team. So I think just kind of researching to what that role or title is for one industry versus the next. It could have different roles in there. And then, because like right now I have skills that I can help in certain areas. So that's why I do it. So I do corporate partnership activation, merchandise, which you're actually doing the online orders and doing this busy work, finance. So like, submitting invoices. I'm doing like basketball operations, like our housing for our players. But those are the types of things that I like enjoy doing, being busy. But at the same time, if you're working for like just for the Chicago side, you'll be in one department. So I think that's the biggest thing that people should realize. Like if you want to do busy work, if you want to do different things, it's great. Or if you want to simplify it a little bit more and hone in on certain skill sets, definitely okay too.
Good. That I'll jump over to Spencer and Steve on the team side. Are things more siloed at the major league level, where you don't get to transition as much between activities?
I would say it's more specialized. And so we have graphic degrees on staff, to analytics experts, to event specialists. So just everything, Jasmine nailed it. I mean, you get such great experience at that level. And then as you come to the professional, the major leagues, it just becomes a lot more specialized.
Yeah, I would agree. Usually what I tell people is exactly what Jasmine did. If you're in the, at the NBA level or NFL level or MLB level, you might be 6 inches wide, but 20 feet deep in whatever you're doing. And if you're, with our G League team in Fort Wayne, you're going to be, 20 feet wide and 6 inches deep. You're going to be given a lot of different opportunities. And so, for folks who aren't really sure exactly where their interests lie, but they know it's within sports, I usually advise, to look to the minor leagues, because you're going to get your hands in a lot of different areas.
More good advice. Nellie, what's different about working at the league level?
So I'd say for us, working for a national governing body, we have arms that spread out to local communities across the country. We are organized into 17 different sections. Some of those sections have states and districts that report up to them. So there's so many levels of tennis jobs across the country. It's almost astounding. I think one of the things that I liked about my role is, as a Grand Slam organizing body, we have 3 other counterparts around the world. So there is that international touch point that we have that we can relate to either their operations. We have counterparts that we can discuss ideas with and see how they operate. And that's kind of an interesting perspective that we have at our level, which I really appreciate and enjoy.
And Katie, what do you enjoy about agencies and that perspective?
Yeah, for me, starting my career after graduation at an agency has been an amazing experience for me, to just get exposed to a variety of different partners and projects to work on. We have, many different projects kind of coming and going. We kind of have to juggle many different things, but that's just been a really rewarding process for me to just get exposed to just so many different problems that are within the sports industry, helping our clients navigate some of those issues, and then overall just kind of gaining a variety of different skills. It's very fast paced and is always changing on the agency side, but I really enjoy that piece of it.
Yeah, Jasmine gets to change from doing a community event to selling a package or dropping parachutes, all within the same team. You get to change teams, leagues, sports all together from project to project. That must be fun.
Yeah, it's definitely fun.
Well, I've been given the 5-minute warning, and the 5-minute warning is now up. I want to toss things back to Ashley. And
Yeah, no,
are you
I just,
back with us, Ashley?
yeah, sorry. Yep. I wanted to be able to share our panelists' contact information, and just also thank everybody again for joining us this evening. This has been such a wonderful event full of a lot of information, that I think our alumni have really enjoyed hearing from. All of you have been able to kind of see the chat and watch some of the questions. And so I just really want to thank all of our panelists, and thank you, Dan, for your time, and really appreciate it. I also just want to say, at the end of this event, you will get a quick survey, and I'd be really grateful if our panelists and our participants could take a moment to fill that out. It will help make our future events even better. And then just, yeah, quick closing. So unless there's anything else from you, Dan.
Well, I just want to say thank you to our panelists for all the insight and your flexibility and willingness to go with me and answer questions. Great job. And thanks to everybody that submitted questions and participated.
Yes. Well, thank you, everybody. And on behalf of the Tippie College of Business, thank you for joining us this evening, and have a great night and a wonderful and safe holiday season.
Thanks. Go Hawks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.